Hello everyone, welcome to BTC Bitesize Season 2, Episode 4. This episode is about teaching punctuation. In this video, we will be looking at what the most common types of punctuation used in English are, there are 14 of them, and some strategies to help this process, as well as what each punctuation element does, if you're already not aware. So these are the 14 most common types of punctuation in the English language. So obviously the obvious ones are period or full stop, question marks, exclamation points, and obviously things like commas. We then have sort of less common ones like the dash, which is usually meant to kind of separate basically separate parts of the text that creates a longer interruption in the text. Semicolons. Semicolons are they connect into independent clauses, and a colon introduces a quotation, an example, a series, or separates two independent clauses when the second explains the first. So they are very common, and you see them all the time in things like entertainment. Colons all the time anyway, in entertainment with, next big blockbuster, and it's like, I think the most famous one was like Batman versus Superman, Dawn of Justice. So that kind of stuff, that's why it pops up. Then you have quotation marks, you have braces, you have brackets, you have parentheses. Brackets can sometimes be called square brackets or square square brackets or square parentheses. So they're kind of like quite common. Braces are commonly used in computer programming or like mathematical work, so they're not hugely common in writing. And parentheses are used all the time. They are like you can basically, they're interchangeable when you want to have qualifying remarks or additional information in the text. You can have them instead of a comma. So normally where you'd have like, let's say, let's say, for example, it's a novel, not that it's relevant to what we do, but someone's writing a novel and they write, today was a hard day. And then in commas, they'll have like, isn't every day, but you can have that in parentheses. It actually looks better in parentheses as well. And then we have the ellipsis, which is a ... Dun, dun, dun. It's the easiest way of remembering that one. And that is used normally when you want to kind of like exaggerate something coming later. You want to kind of stress the pause. Then you have hyphen. Names can be hyphenated. Very common now. We have double-barrel surnames. A lot of Western surnames can be double-barreled, so they will be hyphenated. There are lots of hyphenated words. Example, non-hyphenated. So it's important to know the difference between a dash and a hyphen. Hyphens are very short, dashes are longer. And then finally we have the apostrophe, and it's one of the few cases, one of the three cases in English that we have, which is the possessive case. And obviously the possessive case uses apostrophes a lot when it comes to ownership of something. So they are the common types of punctuation. Okay, so let's look at some tips for teaching punctuation. The first is teach grammar. So whenever we teach a new piece of grammar, especially when it comes to clauses, so dependent or independent clauses, or subordinating or coordinating conjunctions, think of things like, for example, conditionals, the if, comma, if. These are all kind of like important elements when you're teaching them. When they're learning how to write them, they need to know the structure. They need to know the comma goes there, for example, right? So these are all kind of key parts of when introducing them to the grammar topic. The reason we highlight, the reason we have board work is so that they can see the form of it. That's critical really in teaching it. So it's not something that they can just learn kind of straight off the bat. There's no point. They need to kind of they need to be introduced to the punctuation when they're learning the actual grammar itself, which is helpful. The next one's avoid shortcuts. So there's no point kind of generalizing anything. If you want to put a break in a sentence, just use a comma. The problem is then they'll kind of latch onto that, and I know lots and lots of native speakers who are very guilty of turning a sentence into like a paragraph, right? Because they'll just have a run on, what we call a run-on sentence, which just goes on and on and on and on and on, and you might have like a couple of commas in there, basically acting as full stops. But because they think it's a break, they'll use it that way. So avoid shortcuts as best as possible. When they get explained, make sure they are explained properly, basically. The next one is employ context. So I've been banging on about this, and I will continue to bang on about this until I die. But relevancy is everything, and context causes relevancy. There's no point in trying to explain something without people having a context for what you're trying to explain, right? Without them understanding context, they won't understand actually what they're trying to do or what the purpose of what they're trying to do is. Context is everything. So in this case, if you're trying to show punctuation, if you're trying to improve your own punctuation, if you want to improve a student's punctuation, the key is to give them tons of examples. This is where you'd use this one. This is where you'd use this. This is how you use commas. This is how you use hyphens. This is it's the key is always to. It's still easy for me to say a hyphen, like you can have hyphenated surnames, but actually that's one of the most common ways of hyphenating in English. So the context is it's quite common when you take two things and slap them together, you put a hyphen in between them to connect them. So context is critical. So in this case, it's show, don't tell. Show lots of written text. Show them lots of different written text in terms of the variant versions of how you try and convey information. So it can be like business communication, it can be news articles, it can be reports. Bear in mind, all of these are have very different processes in terms of how they write. So these are all critical. So get them reading these things, find them online. There's literally billions of examples of written reports, of business communiques, of news articles, anything. And find an interesting topic, find a relevant topic for your students, get them looking at it, get them reading it. It will help. The next one is stress communication. Obviously, this is like with this, communication is everything, yeah, and English is kind of famous for being very easy to communicate simply. So in this case, that's basically what it is. It is stressing communication. So simple is better than complicated. There is no need to worry about, do I have semicolons in my sentence, right? If you can say what you need to say in a sentence and with just a full stop or maybe just a comma, that's enough. You don't need to do more than that. They don't need to do more than that. So if they're worrying about that, don't worry about it. Or at least stress to them actually that sometimes simple is better. And that way it's much easier for them to punctuate properly. It's much easier for you to teach that punctuation properly. So all of that kind of stuff. That's why it's important. The last one is my favorite thing in the world. Proofread and edit. It's incredibly important that students learn to proofread everything they write. It's actually really important that you guys learn to proofread everything you write. It's important for everyone to proofread what they write. So many times people write stuff and forget about it, and they look at it later, it looks awful. I've read through some of my previous emails where I've written them under massive amounts of time duress, and I read them and I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I wrote essays. I can't believe I wrote my dissertation like that. I can't believe there's so many like little spelling mistakes, little punctuation errors, all this kind of stuff, which I'm like, I'm better than that. I know I'm better than that. And I know the rules. I know how it works. So get them, it's that self-correcting thing, right? They do it in speaking, they need to do it in writing as well. So that's the important thing. So lots of kind of encouragement about proofreading and lots of encouragement about editing, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so let's summarize. So in summary, ensure your students have a firm grasp of grammar rules. That's nice and obvious. Explain things as they come up, but explain them in good detail. Avoid using vague explanations for rules or shortcuts. Don't just leave like, oh, you can use a comma to break a sentence up into smaller chunks, because it will turn into a sentence of which is the length of a paragraph. That's how it works. Be sure to give context for each form with examples from text. Make it relevant. Make it relevant to them, and they will understand and they will learn from it. It also is a really good way of teaching grammar without you having to explain over and over and over again. Sometimes simpler is better. And actually, one of the things they'll learn from text, especially with email communication, actually, is sometimes that simpler emails are much more efficient than a long-winded, bloated email. And in that case, they'll look at it and they'll look at the punctuation, see maybe there's a comma in there, maybe there isn't, and it's just a bit easier. And the last one is to encourage learners to get in the habit of self-editing. And all this was sourced from literacyideas.com. There's a really nice article written on there. And it's very, very in-depth about all the different punctuation points, different forms of punctuation and strategies and stuff like that. So it's a good thing to have a read for. It's all there, it's all online, it's all nice and available for you. So with that being said, thank you very much.